Several offices across the country will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily until next Friday. The department says this is to accommodate the expected increase in clients during this period. It's also urging people who've not yet applied for smart ID cards to capitalize on the extended hours ahead of this year's elections. For more on this, we are joined in studio by Acting Director General Thulani Mavuso. Thank you so much for coming through. So what is the basis of you deciding that during this period, and I'm not sure how long the period is that you are extending the hours, but what's the rationale behind it?
No, thank you very much. Thank you for having us in studio. Basically, what we did last year is that there were a huge problems that we experienced during this particular period in 2018, where we saw an unprecedented number of people visiting our offices. Now, the challenge at the time was that, when it's time to close the office at 4, officials have to close the offices when there were queues outside. So we then launched what we called a war on queues last year, which we tried to capacitate certain offices with extra, for example, computers, photo booths, and so forth. But we then, as EXCO, took a decision that this year we need to extend the hours based on the learnings from the previous calendar year. So we are doing this for the first time this year. We're hoping it's going to be an annual thing, because part of the problem that Home Affairs has is that we do not have an adequate footprint that will be able to cater for the citizens. So we've got to come up with different ways of dealing with this particular problem. So this is now a trial, and we'll see what happens next year. Then we'll have to find another way of extending even for longer.
So where exactly are these offices that will be opening for extended hours? Is it nationwide, or is in particular areas that you've identified as perhaps areas of bottlenecks?
No, we've identified all what we call high-volume offices, because we have offices of different sizes. You've got your large offices, your medium offices, your small offices. The small offices normally, do not have bigger numbers, but your medium office, your large office, like now, we've just left Randburg office, is still packed. Citizens are quite happy with the extension of hours. So we're looking at offices like Mgeni, Tongat, and Pietermaritzburg, and all the other areas in the country. We've got a list that we've published in our website, where our people can actually go there and click and see which offices are part of this 7-to-7 operation.
Is this in addition to opening on the weekends? Because I remember there was a period where there was that debate about the implications for your employees of those extended hours over the weekends.
No, that matter is still, within the bargaining chamber with the unions. We're still trying to resolve it, because part of the, an agenda that we have as a department, we would like to see a Home Affairs that operates 7 days a week. It means Sunday to Sunday, because we do not believe that we should actually operate like an ordinary office that does policy, but ours is to interface with the public. That is why we want to extend our hours. Look, the issue for Saturday at the time was that we were doing a shift system, which obviously did not cater for the payment of overtime, while the unions were raising the issue relating to overtime. So we're still engaging each other on that one. But this one is just a special project dedicated to ensure that people, before they return to school, because I know what results were announced yesterday. There's many other people who will be going to collect their smart ID cards because they are needed at varsities and so forth. And parents who are coming out of leave, they want to ensure that their children actually have all the necessary documents before they go to various places where they normally work.
What about your systems being online? I mean, there was a period last year when your systems were online for a good number of days. Can people be guaranteed that, yes, the hours are extended, but will the systems be online? Or will people find themselves now inside a Home Affairs where it's offline?
Look, we have put a team. For example, in December, I called all the team. We've got various role players who are service providers to the department. We put a team that was a response team throughout the period of December. We never had any glitches during that particular period. So that team is still on hand in order to ensure that we assist our offices. But I must say that you do have offices that are affected. For an example, the office in Giyani, as of today, since last week, Wednesday, has not been working because of the cable theft, which is a Telkom, cable theft. People steal cables, and Telkom has got to replace. In certain instances, I think it was in Soshanguve, where you have Telkom replacing a cable today, it's stolen the following day. So we are now looking at various options of connecting our offices instead of using actually the data lines that Telkom is using, because it's becoming more expensive for them to be replacing those cables. But we do have instances incidences that are isolated for a specific office.
It's anecdotal, of course, from my part, but I have seen a lot of complaints where people even use, refer to you as horror affairs, particularly in the last few weeks. Is it your sense that there's a particular regression that is taking place in terms of your response times and your service times to people?
No, definitely not. Let me just highlight one of the issues, as I've said when we started this interview, was one, the issue of the footprint. Home Affairs has got about 412 offices. Some of those, actually, they are small enough that don't even qualify in terms of my own criteria to be called a fully fledged office because they can offer certain limited services. Secondly, is that in the 412 offices, we're servicing the entire population. Now, if you compare to a post office that has got over 2,400 outlets, so and the population that they are serving is very small. That's why we're looking at other options, like, for example, partnering with other parties like the banks. When we tried the pilot that we've worked with them, so we just need to finalize the triple P so that you can increase the footprint. We've presented a white paper to Cabinet. They are taking the matter very serious for us to be able to improve our footprint, because there are areas that actually do not have a service. We're still maintaining historical, allocation or distribution of offices where you have to go to Durban from Guamashu or Inanda to go to Mgeni office. So we do not want that. We want those areas to be able to have their own offices. So we envisage that Home Affairs actually should have over 3,000 outlets in the country so that you can be able to service the citizens adequately.
How's it looking in as far as the take-up of the ID cards? I see a lot of people still using their green ID books. Where do we stand with that? And is perhaps the associated cost, part of the barrier to people taking this up more?
No, I don't think the cost is prohibitive. What we have seen is that, again, is the issue of the ability for us to reach, the people. We have replaced over 11 million smart cards. We've issued over 11 million smart cards. By the end of this financial year, we would have issued about 13 million smart cards since the start of the project. When the project started, we were supposed to replace 38 million smart cards, but you'll remember that every year there are children who are turning 16. The number keep on increasing. That is why our plan was to ensure that this pilot project with the banks, once we have finalized the pilot, we're then able to roll out so that they can give us more. The banks are ready to give us more sites. We just have to complete the triple P process with National Treasury in order for us to be able to ensure that it has followed all the necessary governance processes. But look, let me just say one thing on the issue that you have raised under regression. I think citizens will recall that it used to take about 6 months to get an ID in this country. It takes about a week. It used to take about 2 months or even more to get a passport. People get passport within a period of 5 days. So I think there are certain gains, that we have been able to achieve. But obviously, the issue that in terms of the budget and our ability to grow. But I think we've got a team now at Home Affairs. I mean, the previous minister, the current minister, we are all trying to innovate as much as possible in order for us to be able to find different ways of delivering services. Also, where people do not even have to come to us. That is why we're looking at kiosks and other options that we have already tested. And once we are ready with that, we'll roll that to the
final issue I want to raise with you, the immigration services at the various ports of entry of the country. Over the holidays, there was a criticism that said, for instance, at OR Tambo, you would find that, the queue that is dedicated for South African passport holders is well serviced and people are moving, whereas at the time, more people were coming into South Africa and standing in long queues. And that's just one example. Now, as we speak, we're talking about people in the SADC region who had gone to their respective homes, now wanting to make their way home either through the airports but also by road. What have you done to intervene in that situation? Because surely it's unacceptable that people should wait hours and hours to be cleared to get into the country.
Okay, on the issue relating to South African passport holders, obviously when you're returning home, there's no visa required and so forth. But when somebody is coming as a visitor, you've got to do a lot of checking in terms of that visa against what is on the system. Because remember, these days you find a very peculiar situation where people have got fraudulent stickers on their passports, because it's easy to digitally print these days. So those are the kinds of things that you need to be able to check in order for you to ascertain. And also those obvious people are traveling with children and so forth. There's a whole lot of checks and balances that you have to deal with that. But on the issue that you are raising for land ports and airports, you know, it's quite easy to manage an airport because you know the flights that are coming, the people that are on board, how many there are. So with your staff, you can actually easily move. That now 8 flights are landing from Europe or wherever, you are able to clear because you have a sense of the traffic. But at Libombo, at Beitbridge, Oshuk, you do not know that there are 10 buses that are actually going to be coming through because they are unscheduled. So in a scheduled environment, it's easy, but in an unscheduled environment, you do find that particular situation that then people will spend longer time in the land ports than at the airports.
But the criticism was that you were not being flexible, even at airports where you know there are scheduled international flights, the A380s that are arriving with a lot of people. You would not be moving people to spread them such that they service the other people that are arriving who are non-South African passport holders. And the criticism was that it actually can hurt our tourism sector.
You know, it's quite an interesting thing because obviously, you know, certain people who complain and report, you'll find that it's individuals who we either, you know, we're expecting to be cleared within a minute or 5. When you look at the trend at OR Tambo, actually there's been a huge improvement. We've deployed a new management there. We've got new people that we recruited last year. So from my own point of view, actually OR Tambo has actually improved, you know, over the years. So we'll have to follow up, obviously, of those specific cases because we've got also cameras that are able to track. You know, we had a complaint that we were dealing with last year where we were able to track a passenger from when they were offloaded by a bus up until when they were serviced by the immigration official. So we then calculated the number of minutes the person spent from the bus into the immigration station until they left. So it is easy for us to be able to say if there's a certain individual specifically, we can go to the cameras and be able to check specifically that particular person, how long they stood in the queue in order for us to be able to do that. Because remember, you know, we have a constraint. I mean, the Department of Home Affairs is running with the staff of about 9,100 people. We lost 500 positions last year because of the constraints that are financially related. Also, if you look at the resources that we have, I mean, we're running a department that serves the entire population and foreign nationals who visit the country. In some instances, we process 150,000 a day of travelers. And we're looking at the department that is running at a budget of about 7.9 billion rand, which is quite difficult for us to be able to operate.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Thulani Mavuso.